Hello and welcome to Simblified, a show that's kind of like a rock show, except I'm not quite sure why, because it seemed like a good way to start, but I don't really have an analogy for it. So let's just assume that we make you feel all energized and the three of us are on stage brandishing our guitars and making the crowd go absolutely wild, screaming our names and getting drunk while they listen to Simplified. That's probably what people do, right, on every Monday?
I mean, it wasn't the greatest intro, but at least you didn't call us the Nickelback of podcasts. But anyway.
So give you a little context as to why we are doing this. So recently, Srikeit, who is co-host on Simplified, say hello, Srikeit.
Hi.
And I were attending a music festival called Mahindra Independence Rock. Independence Rock is a legendary rock and metal festival here in India. It is brought back after almost a decade. And many of the legendary old Indian bands had come together for the first time in a really, really long time. And it's a nice, new, beautiful venue, etc., etc. And it just felt great to, one, be at a gig, two, see these old bands again, three, see a lot of people who I haven't seen for such a long time, and four, I think it just felt cathartic to do all of this immediately after the pandemic. So it just, all in all, just a really nice weekend of nice music, memories, vibes, as they say, and stuff like that. Now, in the middle of all this, where Srikeit and I were probably losing our shit to zero or something, somebody came up to us and said, Srikeit, I'm going to let you take it from here because you're a better storyteller than I am.
Yeah, but it's actually pretty sad because I don't remember the name of the person because I never got that because we was too loud and we were under the influence of certain beverages. But either way, so I think Chuck and I were over there rocking out to something or just going nuts, and someone comes up to us and says, "Hi, we are big fans of Simplified." And there's not just one person. This person is in a group of people, and they come up, and the best part is they come up and they're like, "We're big fans of Simplified," and we're feeling all like proud and whatever, and we're like, "Oh
and
my
they
god."
They were ready. The two people over there had the camera. As the girl, she was saying this, she came with like, "I'm a big fan," and then immediately turned around to take a photo. It's like, for us, we were like, "Whoa, what's happening?"
The important caveat being, we're like, "Oh, that's great. This thing." Then she kind of caveats and says, "We're actually big fans of Naren. But yeah, we like Simplified also." So we were like, okay, the universe is in balance now.
But yeah, thank you to whoever that was.
Basically, she told us that you are the people Naren talks to, so we like you as well.
Oh, okay, sure. That also that works for us. Honestly, that works.
That works for me. God. I'm going to take that as a win.
I'm adding that in CV. A person Naren talks to on Simplified. I'm okay with that.
We were effectively staying in the rock music and gig mood. We are basically Naren's groupies.
Yeah.
I am absolutely. You could put me in a basket full of tomatoes and not know the difference. That's how red I am right now.
Oh, wow.
Fabulous.
Yeah, so we were basically wondering, okay, do we just talk about that or do we contextualize
so we can start by talking about, so what we're going to take on today as a topic, and this is going to be obviously another freewheeling discussion, but what we're going to take on as a topic is just talk about the independent music scene, as well as like how festivals happen in India and like wherever that conversation takes us pretty much.
Yeah.
But let's begin. I think we can begin with talking about the very first, whatever we can classify as a gig, the very first gig any of us have been to. And I'll go with that. So for the very first, so to speak, gig that I went to, which I didn't even realize that I was actually going to, I just was there and it happened to be around, was I lived right next to IIM Ahmedabad while growing up in Ahmedabad. So I lived right next door and I had a few friends in IIM Ahmedabad and I was visiting them and they were like, "Oh, there's some event happening today." And I was like, okay, here in IIM Ahmedabad. And because I was already because I was like faculty guest, right? So I was on campus already and all that stuff. So we just went there for that event and I found myself in the front row of IMA Chaos, which is a pretty big fest, and with Indian Ocean playing over there. So the very first band that I saw live, and some of the very first songs I ever heard was Kandisa and them playing Kandisa. This was, I think, way back in 2005 or 6 or sometime like that. So that's my very first fest that I went to, which I didn't realize what was happening. And I was like, oh, who are these guys? And they played like Everyone was going nuts over there, and the students were all there, and it was an
That's
amazing fest. And I
amazing.
was like, wow, that's a transformational experience. I need to do more of
Yeah,
this.
more of this, right? Whatever this thing is.
Yeah.
Mine, I remember fairly well. And also, like, what a great first gig this was. This was in Thrissur, Kerala, of all places. Not the place where you'd think that, a lot of great gigs and all that happen, even though there's a fair bit of musical talent, I suppose, in the place. So me and my friends, we were just learning instruments and basically trying to form a band or something. So we were like obsessed with anything that had anything to do with, guitars or keyboards. And like we were like really getting into that scene. And a friend of ours, the guitarist of our band, who is now the lead guitarist of a pretty good post-rock band called Mushroom Lake, he was learning guitar at an academy, and he said, our guys are putting on a show and it's going to be a tribute to Pink Floyd. Would you guys like to come? And we said, one, great. We were all just getting into Pink Floyd at that time as well. And two, we said, yeah, I mean, what else is there to do for entertainment in Thrissur? So might as well go. We didn't have too much expectation, honestly, because we thought, okay, it's just like an academy putting on a show. So, okay, it'll be decent, I guess, at best. It was in an auditorium. It was, when we walked in, so to everything that I've described so far, you're probably picturing like one small stage and plastic seats and, one acoustic guitar, they'll sing Wish You Were Here. And, no, when we came, there was a grand piano on stage. There was a drum set with chimes. There were like at least like 6 mics on stage. It looked grand. And so the entire idea of this concert, the Dream Theater tribute concert, was actually the brainchild of 2 alumni of this institute, both of whom went on and were at the time studying at an IIT or something like that, decided to come back and put this little thing together. It was note for note perfect in terms of execution. Like, and when I say note for note perfect, they actually had samples recorded for the intro of Time with all those alarm bells and all that going off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they went up to that level. The Great Gig in the Sky, they actually had a vocalist who was doing that, the Claire Torrey's, the operatic parts. They even had like intro of Time, they had that sampled and put in as well, that 7/8 beat. And what blew me away the most was the solo on Comfortably Numb that they played was the extended Pulse version. This was interesting because there used to be those of a certain vintage. Might remember in the 90s, there was a short-lived pop band called Seven, SE7EN, which used to have a couple of videos on MTV and Channel V and stuff, like very short-lived. Formed by, of course, a bunch of folks who used to do session work, I suppose, in Kerala. And their lead guitarist happened to be pretty good, and he was a guy who was pulling off all the solos over here. So I mean, that show set such a high standard in terms of gigs to follow. And then, of course, a lot of other gigs did happen. I think the first big band that I saw was Mother Jane, Junkyard Groove, and somebody else who was Moksha at Jipmer in Pondicherry when I moved to Madras for the first time. So yeah, pretty big standard set in terms of gig. And Srikeit, by the way, if you had chosen to go to IIM Ahmedabad's Chaos 2 years later, if Iron Maiden were not playing in Bombay the same weekend, you would have seen me perform. Because our band made it through to the finals, and we were literally like, okay, Maiden's playing in Bombay, but at the same time, our band somehow has managed to make it to the finals of IIM Chaos Band Hunt. And we were in such a dilemma whether to do it or not. But yeah, finally we went to the Maiden gig. Yeah, that's a story, right?
Quite some story.
Yeah.
So I'm not much of a lad for, Western music, but
Naren actually saw 2-year-old Stradivarius being played.
Yeah.
Okay. That was an unnecessary dig at you. Sorry.
50 years ago when I was 74.
Yeah, I know. Like I mentioned, rocking out to Tansen.
Yeah, so I actually got to attend, Ian Anderson is his name, Jethro
Oh, Ian Anderson. Nice. Yeah.
concert in Bombay in Shanmukanand Hall of all places, if memory serves, sometime in the 2000s. And it was electrifying, right? So till that time, I'd really not, I'd sort of attended, there was, Pink Floyd was a big favorite in our college and people are very good at it. So what I found was, what I've seen is if someone is really passionate about some music, they can really play it with all their soul. And it talks, that music then, that communicates. It's nice. And so this Ian Anderson thing was electrifying. It was, the sort of energy on the stage and, in the audience, it was amazing. So that's my sort of memory of a handful of gigs that I've attended. So that's it.
Yeah. Honestly, at this juncture, there are so many different directions that this conversation could possibly go off to. But weirdly enough, the one that I am inclined to take the most, I know we wanted to start off with Indian independent music and all that. But what Naren was saying, I'd actually like to talk about, and you tell me if you're okay with this, is I actually want to say about the transformational experience of live music in some sense.
Yeah. It's a very good. So in my case, I've always liked Indian classical music. And Indian classical music, there is not much. And back in the day, there was zero. The performance aspect is not really there. Most people listen to Indian classical music with their eyes shut. You're trying to absorb the, all the notes. That's how it happens. But Western music, especially popular music, rock or all the other genres, that dimension is vital. So the energy on the stage is transformational.
Yeah.
And it gets to you. Even someone like me who has close to zero appreciation or feeling for the music, after some time, and that sort of opened my eyes to the universality of music. Like, okay, the genres differ, but the notes are the same and they do appeal to you. So if you really open your ears and really listen to it with your mind, mindfully, a lot of music will communicate to you. So my guess is it's our preconceived notions and our sort of whatever expectations we already have in our head that prevents us from doing so. That was my...
I think that's how true it is, because I think it's especially when it comes to Western music. So now I'm definitely not an aficionado of Indian music. I cannot claim, other than like Bollywood music, which is something I listen to a lot by myself, which is a different vibe altogether, which is something that I've never really heard live much. If you talk about like Western music, while I attended a few gigs by myself prior to this, for me, I think something like what Weekender brought on the table, right? Like was sampling music that you're not familiar with. Like earlier for me, music was all about like going and chasing the bands that you've heard on like your Discman to an iPod to every other device that you had later, or from MP3s on Winamp on your computer, and then listening to them live was something that was amazing for me. But later on, like just listening to live music, hearing that entire thing, feeling like whether it's like calm music where you're feeling that serenity through that go through the crowd, or you're feeling the energy which we recently experienced with Bloody Wood, I guess. I mean, that was electric, right? Like you feel the electricity running through the crowd. You're feeling something much greater than what the music can produce.
Absolutely.
Just the music can produce by itself. I think that experience came to me, and that's where I learned that, you know what, it's about, yes, it requires a huge leap for someone like me. Like, for example, I still won't consider myself a music aficionado of sorts, where I'm going to be like, I actively spend time sampling new music and stuff like that. But one thing is, like, when I go to the live music fests, is because of the environment, because of that entire equation that exists between the musician and the crowd, like it becomes something it's a beautiful transaction of sorts, right? Where they are playing for your attention, but you feel like they're almost playing for you. And you feel like owe that attention, and then they're rewarding you with the musical engagement that they give you.
Yeah,
100%. So it's a great give and take of sorts.
Can't agree more. It's almost like the audience has an equal part to play in your experience of the gig. And so in some sense, everybody else over there is as important, maybe as a collective, to the 4 or 5 musicians who are on stage. Like when I think back on my favorite live music experiences, I think this has been the case. So there are two things, right? For me, and obviously me being the person that I am, I tend to overanalyze things like this. So when I think about what are the musical experiences that have meant most to me, there are two factors. One, the audience has a role to play. Either they're crazy electric, like the Bloody Wood gig that you spoke about, or for me, that would have been, say, something like what Trivium was at Grass Pop, which I still rank as my favorite live music experience ever. Or it is very, like, they're not electric, but you can sense that, oh, wow, we all know that we are watching something very special happening over here together, you know. I remember this was a feeling at many Blackstrap Blues gigs, for instance, where everybody was just silent. We're like, holy shit, what is happening in front of us right now? Like, this is something, boys, this is something very special. You know, that kind of feeling was there. That's possibly one. And the second reason why I love some gigs is because I don't know how to exactly explain this, but it's like you go in, you get more than what you expected from the gig in some
Yeah.
sense. Like one way I wrote about this once is in the same tour when I went to Europe in 2019, saw a whole bunch of bands, right? I went to see Metallica, I went to see Knopfler, a whole bunch of bands, many dream bands I ended up seeing. But the memories that I remember the most were like when I went to Metallica, I expected a 9 and I got 9. Expectations were met, There were some bands where I went in expecting maybe like a 7, but then I got a 9 out of that. And that transformation for me was really what made it amazing. Like I look back on some of my favorite gigs and they are like, whoa, okay, I didn't expect that. Like even the Weekender memories are that way, right? Like, oh wow, I never, like this random band from Australia, like holy shit, what is happening over here? Like I remember one of my favorite Weekender memories, I was walking around frustrated that electronica is playing everywhere. I got damn angry at all. I'm sure you remember this. I like main stage mein electronic here, electronic everywhere, electronic. Finally, out of frustration, I went to the stage dedicated to electronica. I'm like, why is there a guy with a guitar over here? And that is where I discovered the joy of Dualist Inquiry, and I've been a fan ever since. So it's crazy, right? Sometimes it's really about sort of the communal experience that really elevates a live performance. And for somebody else who was sitting on the other end of the room, the experience instead of a 9 could have been a 7 for whatever reason. I'm sure there were people who came to Bloodywood who didn't enjoy it because it was either too loud or they weren't in the thick of the action like we were. So yeah, I think the subjective nature also is something, I guess.
So how much of it is objective and how much of it is subjective? It's a fascinating question. So looking at it from the musician's point of view, it's obviously the band itself feeds off the audience.
Yeah.
So is it that if the audience doesn't give you the response you look for, your performance will falter or be below par?
I'd say because most of the guys who we end up seeing are professionals, they're unlikely to falter. I'd say they wouldn't be motivated to elevate their performance. Let me put it that way. Now, elevating performance could either just be in terms of energetics. They're playing the same notes, but they're just more passionate about it, and that puts on a spectacle. Or two, sometimes they feel like improvising, like, wow, this crowd is really into what we're doing. Let's give them a couple of extra songs, or let me extend the solo a little bit. So it could happen either way. To answer your question, I think that subjective aspect, it's there. Even if you listen to music on Spotify right now, there is that subjective aspect, right? You will like some kind of music better than me for whatever reason. But I think this is amplified all the more so for a live experience. I think the unguaranteed outcome of what a live performance could be is in some way the appeal as well. It's sort of like the sporting element of things could go wrong. Like I remember, like I've been to music festivals and events where we didn't know whether the gig would happen, whether rain would come and ruin everything, whether the band would play the song that we wanted them to, whether a special guest would come on. I think all of these things really just add to the magic. And if you can listen to your favorite song on Spotify right now, but to travel 2 hours to go after having waited for them for 10 years to come to India and then seeing them perform it live in front of you when you didn't know it would be part of the set list, I think that is something special. I think that is something.
I think there are different tranches of how you kind of like can connect certain like different experiences. Like you said, like, there's one thing about like, for me, that was Porcupine Tree. When Porcupine Tree came to India, was like this band that I was waiting for a long time. And then afterwards they came down and their performance was everything I hoped for and more almost. Like it was all that. A similar experience with Metallica as well. But then again, I think that's one level of live experience which you actually go through and you experience in some way. But the other version of it was, I'd say, similar to what you were saying, like the electronica stuff, right? Like to be very honest, a lot of my later musical influences are through you. Like Chuck has been we kind of listen to music together, and Chuck has always been like the musical influencer for me. So, I kind of veered away. I was more in the progressive rock, hard rock, all those spaces, alternative spaces, versus like an electronica or something like that, because that was not what Chuck would like listen to, and generally, and nothing that I ever got introduced to. But when I think this was at Weekender and I was there with Divya, of course, and we were pretty intoxicated on certain liquids, and we turned up at the electronica stage itself. And it kind of like there was this moment of those breaking of preconceived notions of saying that, know what, this is what I thought of this music, that it's just, it's not really music, it's just some kind of stuff that they're playing on a computer and they're just noises and people are just going there to ditchuk music, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I kind of put me in a different
Yeah.
frame of mind. I was a more receptive person with my inhibitions lowered and stuff like that. And somehow that's how I actually discovered Nuclear. So, and like learn to love music from Nuclear and the Duelist Inquiry and like all these different bands. And like now I have an appreciation for electronic music where I'm like, you
Yeah.
know what, this is not like, it's not just, there is a certain amount of skill, there's a certain
Yeah.
amount of enjoyment to be had in that kind of music.
Yeah.
And also, again, referencing Bertie again over here, the attitude of being open to all kinds of music and not disparaging one kind of music because it doesn't appeal to you, or that you feel it's not skillful enough, or that it's not like enough effort has not been put into creating it. I think keeping that open mind allows you to like really find your own scope of enjoyment in music.
Yeah. And I'll take that point a little further and I'll move it more than just the musicians itself or the musicmanship itself. I think when you go to a festival or a live event, especially something that of the scale of the Independence Rock event that we attended, or an N7 Weekender, or in my case, Grass Pop, or in some other case, a Glastonbury, or whatever it is. I mean, there is a point at every festival where a festival attendee is like, holy shit, just imagine the effort it must have taken to put this whole thing together. Just imagine the logistics of a music festival. All the artists need to be free on the same date. Permissions and all that need to happen. Like just seeing the stage itself is like, I mean, this epiphany hits everybody at every live music event at some point of time, right? They're like, there's a sound guy over there, there's a lights guy over there. I have been in that console, that light and sounds console, and the amount of work that happens over there is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
We don't see it sometimes as the audience when the lights are coordinated to the way these guys are singing. There's a guy over there who is ready to release that confetti when the bass drops, when Nuclear plays. It's just fascinating. And I think, I mean, obviously, when you're listening to music on Spotify, especially when it says background music, this doesn't hit you, right? This obviously, you don't realize the hard work and all that has gone into doing this. And during live music, you're seeing, oh, wow, this band is 6 people. Each of them has a role to play. Along with that, there are probably 10, 15 others backstage, 5 over here.
Yeah.
I think all that just adds to the sense of occasion that this event should go flawlessly. Everybody should have a great time. And I think all that also adds to the experience of a live music. That and, of course, liquor. That always helps.
And that's what, I mean, I'd say I have learned to not dismiss it that, oh, you have enough liquor, all music sounds good, because I have been
Sober.
liquored up in places like, I mean, one classic example would be, I don't know whether it's still the same, but how Hard Rock Cafe used to be in Andheri. There, the sound was terrible. Like even great
In
bands
Worli.
coming and playing. And I think in Worli, sorry, not in Andheri, in Worli. HRC in Worli, where I think once we went there to see Baiju play for Mother Jane. I think Mother Jane was playing over there. And like, even though we loved the music and the artists that were playing there, the sound was so terrible that we were like, oh God, like I could tell like the song is not playing right because the sound was off. I couldn't tell what's off because I don't know music that well, but I just knew that it was not right. I'd say that's where I think when music is produced well, and that's where I think the music also comes down to like the environs. Like for me, when I think of great live music, it's obviously Weekender, which is my standard of what great music can be. And you just think of these rolling beautiful lawns and like this open vista of whatever you're seeing, a stage in the middle of it, and everybody is like, either some people are sitting down, some people are like just standing up, leaning on something, or just being themselves, being by themselves and having that great time. And in that, like I'm completely voluntarily here and I'm at ease and I'm receptive to anything that you're going to play for me. And that kind of mood really sets you up for the music that you're playing. So both the sound and the production, as well as the vibe of what the setup is like. Because even that atmosphere is not just, it's not accidental. It's created.
Yeah.
Someone's put effort to make that for you. And that's something that really needs to be treasured and valued as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is true whether you're talking about a heavy metal festival or whether you're talking about like a, I don't know, Carnatic metal. Oh, that was a good idea. Carnatic performance in Madras or something like that. There's no doubt about it, right? Like that. I think it goes back to those few basic things. And I'm sure Harari has spoken about this at some point. In fact, the book that I was reading and raving about for a lot of this year, Ted Goya's Subversive Music of History, a Subversive History rather, speaks really about effect that music has had on audiences, not just from an entertainment point of view. Music in fact had a lot
Yeah.
of its origins in the shaman tradition and for trance and things like that, which served a slightly
Yeah.
more spiritual and later warfare like role before it got co-opted and became part of music, like music for entertainment. We in some sense are deep rooted to react tribalistically to music. So he writes it beautifully, saying how today's heavy metal mosh pits are really just an
Hmm.
evolution of warfare in some sense and the tribal rituals.
Oh,
The
wow.
end outcome is different. Yeah, the end outcome is completely different. Over here is completely peaceful. There it was meant to motivate you to go into battle, and before that it was to get rid of spirits or something. But the impact that it has on your brain and all that is kind of like the same, right? The impact of that tribalistic music to this to whatever Trivium or Iron Maiden's playing is kind of like the same. So it's kind of interesting that way. We are, as humans, we are kind of wired to be receptive to music and react to it in different ways. Aggressive music it puts you in a certain way. Romantic music and all that puts you in another mindset, in a mind space
Yeah.
completely. So yeah, I get what you're saying. So live music, I don't think is going to go away anytime. And I think if anything else, this is true for all arts really. The pandemic really has made us realize how much we miss this and how much we miss
Yeah.
strangers coming together in a room and just cheering for something together. Be it a comedy show or
Right. Yeah.
be it a gig.
Naren, I had a question for you.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to check one thing with you here was, I mean, we were talking about the live music experience for like the gigs that we go to and like Indian musical performances that are more Western in that sense. I mean, I don't know whether you attend live music events as far as Indian classical is concerned
I
or
do.
Indian
Yeah.
music is
Yeah.
concerned. So I'm really interested to know because this is something I have no idea or concept of. Like, does that, like, say you listening to that music on a good pair of earphones at home
Hmm.
versus listening to that music live, is that experience different for you? How is it varied for you in any way?
Welcome back. Your podcast's delivery status is now being fulfilled.
So there is difference in what it used to be and what it is now. So back in the day,
Okay.
and I'm talking about the 70s and the 80s when I used to attend classical music concerts, they used to be significantly longer, the performance. So Indian classical music, raga based music, it usually starts slow. There's something known as a vilambit khayal, which goes on for as much as an hour, where
Hmm.
the musician, the singer, expounds, goes into the intricacies of it. It starts very slowly, and then the tans
Hmm.
start getting more and more intricate. It's melodic.
Hmm.
There is,
Hmm.
so, and then it gets faster and faster, and then there is something known as a drut, which is the fast part. And that goes on.
Right.
The difference between recorded music and records were records. They were LPs, and they
Hmm.
were usually, I think, 25 minutes or something aside. So that would
Oh,
be the
wow.
length of the performance, 25 or 30 minutes.
Hmm.
So to that, and so singers would, let themselves go. There would be a lot of intricacy and things like that.
Hmm.
Now what has happened is somehow the attention span of the audience seems to have shrunk. So while you do have 3-hour concerts, you are
Hmm.
likely to have many more ragas of maybe 20 or 30-minute or even 10-minute length songs,
Hmm.
different kind of thing, than one long ass performance of 2 hours or 3 hours.
Oh,
So that
wow.
is
Okay.
one thing. And for some people, like for me, I miss that. Indian classical music is very immersive. You sort
Hmm.
of go in, and then the person starts singing, and then you sort of get lost into that. It's almost like you're in a trance, and the melody envelops you, all those kind of
Hmm.
things happen. And there is, of course, the energy element, so if the singer is a very vigorous performance or something, it gets to you. But not all ragas lend themselves to vigor. There are some which are meditative, there are some which
Yeah.
have
Yeah. Yeah.
pathos in them, and things like that. Uh, but nowadays, it's more of dazzle. The singer is expected to dazzle, entertain.
Hmm.
There is more accent on very quick tans or very nimble sort of acrobatics with the voice and things like that. which for someone like me is not. I was looking for a spiritual experience, and this is something which is showmanship. It makes sense in the light of what contemporary or Western music is doing. Western music, it really sort of pumps you up. It's live, it's lively, it's energetic, and it is communal, right? So everyone in the audience is basically into it. That has an energy of its own. I got that sense when I attended one of those blues festivals, right? And somebody, I think Warren, was playing
This would have been Mahindra
BB
Blues
King.
Fest, probably.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was
Mahindra
playing
Blues Fest,
BB
yeah.
King.
Warren played with BB King, yeah.
They were insane. I mean, the audience, the energy of the audience, you could almost, they were not really making a sound, but it was almost audible. The energy was almost audible. Yeah. So it's a different, and it's a completely different experience. So meditative and all is fine. It's on one. So to come back to the question, I would now prefer to listen to Indian classical music at home on a good pair of headphones, but Western rock or blues or any kind of music, I would be much more interested in going to a live performance.
This is amazing. This is interesting. When Naren was saying that, Srikeit, I'm sure you thought the same. All the impact that, or he was talking about, you can almost equate this to rock music in some way. Like Naren, I would love to take you to a post-rock concert, because if you're looking for that meditativeness, that closing eyes and just getting lost in it, that trance thing, like going to like a gig like we went to, Across Seconds or something like that, that whole post-rock scene, as we keep searching, I think you would absolutely love that. And again, the aspect of showmanship is almost like there's an element of commercialization in there, and you can draw a parallel to lead vocalists in the 80s needed to be a little showy and all that. And when you said you prefer the meditativeness over the showmanship, it's almost like for Naren, post-rock, yes, progressive metal, no. It's almost like you can draw these kind of comparisons across genres. And maybe even across art forms. I'm assuming that you would rather read a book that draws you in, rather than it's like somebody who is trying to show off how many GMAT level words they know. But this is fascinating. Yeah, this is absolutely fascinating.
I mean, not just genres of art. I am also looking at parallels to our previous episode where we talked about friendships, where we talked about how, like, if you were to compare genres of music or performances with what you look at with friendships, where I mean, you can almost look at it as there are those who are just quiet and who have a lot of substance, and they're trying to like get their point across in a quiet way, versus someone who's a showman and who's tried too hard. And then there's the things that attract you towards them. Like there might be that intangible quality which you can't put your finger on, which is drawing you to that music, even though it's something that doesn't seem like it might logically attract you in any which way. So I'm seeing a lot of parallels in multiple different areas as well.
Yeah.
You know where this conversation is going, and actually now might be a good time to, I don't know, maybe announce to the world or put it out there formally for the first time that this is something, what Srikeit and I were talking about is something that I've been thinking of for a very long time. Like I've been introspecting a lot as to why I like the kind of music that I do specifically. Like, because while externally, like Naren, for example, you might say that, oh, you listen to a lot of hard rock and whatever, but even within that genre, there are some bands that I distinctly don't like, even though many others do. So I've been doing a lot of that thinking over the year, and I've created like this list of 12 reasons why I love the songs that I do, and eventually plan to put that in some form, be it maybe an article or be it something of that sort. And there is an idea that I have, which hopefully will find its way to a podcast form eventually at some point of time. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say for now. But yeah, when Srikeit and I had this conversation, I was running him through this my list of things. He's like, yeah, this makes so much sense on a lot of other levels as well, be it art, be it movies, be it friendships. So yeah, I think these meta parallels are there kind of like everywhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And different things in different spheres, right? So you might like deeply meditative music, but your tastes in
literature
movies might go to Maramari, or whatever, and that changes. I find myself, when I'm watching movies, I find myself very attracted to Maramari kind of movies. So like, and Sheila, like, what? You're the least violent kind of person I know. And then how can you, and gory, right? I watch movies like John Wick and whatever the rubbish, and they're like about 3 bodies every 2 minutes.
Maybe even the kind of, and this is the part of the conversation I wish Tony was here for, like even maybe the matches that you enjoy or you thought were the most memorable might say a lot about you. Like I think I pissed off a lot of people once when I said I would rather see India lose in a great match rather than they win in a boring match. I think I got a lot of hate of it on Twitter once. Thankfully, this was a long time back, so I'm still alive. But I think
No, I mean, not just the kinds of matches that you like, but the kinds of teams that you support,
teams,
and the kinds
players that you support,
like the players, playing styles that you enjoy, like what is that thing that really attracts you. So I mean, it goes across genres. But circling back to
live music where we started,
circling back to live music, I think the other aspect that I really feel is quite intense as far as live music is concerned is there is this. I mean, it's also the character of the performers themselves, right? Like what they show, what
Very
they
true.
say,
Yeah.
and how they kind of like interact with you. Like there are definitely a large portion of performers who are I mean, they're literally standing there without even acknowledging that there is a crowd in front of them.
Correct.
Right? They are in their own meditation and they are in there as well.
Zoned out.
But but I find it really interesting. Like Chuck, you might find this like I think a lot of fans of different music find these interesting quirks about the musicians and how they play or what they do when they perform.
Yeah.
Like for example, Steven Wilson being barefoot when he performs,
Correct,
or that Colin Edwin performing with a smile on his face, or any of the other bands like they're for us Zero like taking random phrases and turning that into music in some way or the other. Like all of these. I think what I say is like almost the trivia of live music kind of thing, where it's this external ephemera, but that ephemera actually makes you like it's actually much more endearing for the band, and that's what you actually sign up for when you go for live music. Because in recorded music, what you get is, or the fact that in a lot of ways, like certain musicians who completely like when they're playing their music, they don't play it according to how they do it normally. They go completely off script when they're playing it live. Right.
Yeah.
All those like variations are actually what add to the richness of it. A lot of people get pissed off by that. Honestly, I know. I mean, in some music that you want them to play the song the way it is.
The way you
but
know
in a
it.
lot of ways, the lot of ways that variation is what actually adds a lot of the spice and makes live music that unique piece of unique.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll give you one example of this that I experienced, and this might be a band that both of you might have fleetingly heard some music of, but would have definitely heard. The band is Kiss. KISS. So Kiss are an American rock band, and the image that you might have of them is, those they have this face paint thing going for them, and they've been playing reliable rock for the last 30-40 odd years. And they were the closing band at Grass Pop, the metal fest that I went to. And like I could see on the forums when the lineup was announced, like how can Kiss close the concert? Like such a metal festival where you're getting these bunch of clowns to close the show. Because Kiss is one of those bands, right? Because of their excessive imagery, they are both loved and derided in equal measure. Like how can a metal band or how can a rock band choose to have personality is almost like what the thinking is. But trust me, on that closing night, these guys had every single one of those 30,000 attendees over there eating out of their hands. Like they were showmen to the T, like to the point where when they were doing this, their equivalent of a jugalbandi or something, and when it ended, the drummer just pointed his mic towards the camera, and the camera panned exactly at that point of time to show that ending. It's like everything was synchronized. Everything is like they knew
part
they
of
were
the
putting
script,
on a show. I mean, script in the best sense, right? Like they knew they were putting on a live show, and they were magnificent at putting on, just putting on a show. And I'm sure, like, again, many of the bands that I love, I would much prefer seeing them live than listening to the songs. Like Scrat is an example that comes to mind from India. I think they make good songs, but watching them live and what they can do to a crowd with their simple but energetic music is another experience, is another level altogether. So I think once you see a band live, I think that is when your fandom for them, you decide whether you're really a fan of this band or not. And on the converse, I'd like to think that if you've ever seen a band live, you have some connect to them. Like you saw them at some point of time. You sacrificed something to see that band live. I think there is a connect that you will always carry forward with you. Like I see, for example, some band that I must have seen once or twice 10, 12, 13 years ago. And I said, oh yeah, I saw you guys at St. Thomas College. Like, yeah, you were there for that gig. Like, and then we start trading stories about that. Nobody has
Yeah.
ever said like, oh, I listened to you on Spotify last night. Like, there's no, there is nothing in that. But yeah, I think lots of random, lots of random thoughts on live music. No,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
No, but it's amazing. So one thing, hats off to, I think America gets the credit, right? So live music and all the appeal of it came up because of some inventions, right? So good hi-fi, really huge, sort of amp systems. Because if you have a crowd, you need to have a crowd of a few thousand.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not happening. And if you have a crowd of a few thousand, you need a music system which is able to amp it up. It wasn't there, before 100, 120 years ago. So that. But when that came up, there were entrepreneurs, impresarios who sort of sensed this opportunity, put it together. This
Yeah.
entire experience of live music almost qualifies as an independent art form.
Oh,
It's not
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Not all, yeah.
Yeah. On YouTube, you will see videos like the logistics of concert. Do you know when Metallica travels, when they tour, they actually have a separate van which is just for laundry. They
Wow.
take their washing machines with them. They have their own dietitians with them who travel with them. They have their own workout routines and all that. It's like you said, Naren, it's an entire industry. And sometimes if you think about it, if you actually step back, what that sense of awe that I said you sometimes feel about the bigness of a music festival, if you expand it to think about, damn, what all have humans invented and collaborated with, and what fictions have they created, as Harari would say, for a music festival to exist? Like from commerce to art to this shared collective experience would have been unimaginable like so many years ago. But hey, we made it
Yeah.
happen through a combination of a lot of
No,
things.
and the entrepreneurship, right? So there's some
Yeah,
guy who's thought about it, like Woodstock, for example, put up millions of dollars or whatever it was, and it was a resounding hit. But what if it was a
Yeah.
flop? What if it was a terrible experience? Whatever, and
Yeah.
like they really do that well. They take those risks, they carry it through, and they redefine the entire process as they do it.
Yeah. Like one of the things that like I'm fond of thinking, and Amit Verma is too, we spoke at length about this, is how sometimes the medium can dictate the art. And that is true for live music sometimes. Like when you listen to a song, sometimes you know that this is made for making audiences go up and down, right? You can almost sense
Yeah.
like, oh, this chorus was made for that whole call and response sort of thing with the audience. And in contrast to that, to be fair, it's not all about live experience. Sometimes a studio itself can be an instrument. The Beatles, for example, famously decided to stop touring. For them, a constraint was, and this is to show the genius of the Beatles, they said, listen, if you're going to go on tour, then we will always be constrained. We will always have to make music that can be replicated live. So if we take live out of the equation, then we can do a lot more in the studio. And that's how they became studio
Exactly.
geniuses. They didn't tour since 65 or 66, whenever Revolver came out, or Rubber Soul came out. But yeah, so it kind of like works both ways. But yes, that means that it's right, Naren, exactly what you said. It's like the setting up of the live thing is as much an art as the performance itself. And
Yeah.
okay, so here's one thing I'd love everybody who's listening to this to do, especially if you're a passionate fan of one artist. It doesn't matter which genre, it doesn't matter which country, whatever. It could be Bollywood, it could be heavy metal, it could be electronic, whatever it is. Try to find videos on how their concerts are put together. And you will have a much deeper appreciation for music as a whole, I think. Like I sat and saw an entire documentary on how Metallica put their recent worldwide tour together, where they had 30-minute interviews with the lights guy, like how these things are synced. You will never experience live music again once you realize all the various components that go behind it. It's absolutely insane. Blows my mind sometimes how these things are actually put together. So yeah.
Yeah. So that was
Oh wow, that is a fascinating random conversation,
yeah.
no? Okay, I think, but however, unless our fans are asking for an encore, I think we should. I think we should call
Yeah,
curtains on this.
yeah.
By the way, guys, we've been doing a lot of these random unscripted episodes of late. Please let us know what you think of them, or whether you want us to go back to. We haven't done a profundity in a while, so if you want us to
Yeah.
to get all that back, let us know. We will comply. We will do as the audience demands.
Yes. Well said.
That being said, folks, as much as we love doing this, Simplified Live, that 100th episode was a memory
Something
to remember,
else.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a memory to remember. And the live music also. There was live music also over there. What more you want?
There was. You
Live
can't-
Yeah, lovely. I think we should wrap this up then so that we can get
Yeah.
on with our
Yep.
lives. And this is for that person. This episode is for that person who came and told us
Yeah.
this entire episode is your fault.
So yeah, stay safe, stay alive, and stay simplified.
Wow, that's
Wow, profound. And now we have a profundity.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. See you guys next week. Have a great time.
Scream for me, Simplified.